Justice League is a weird one. Normally, I'd be ready to shred and criticize a DCU movie because these movies genuinely make it easy to do so. However, Justice League is a weird situation because on one hand, it does have problems. Justice League isn't perfect by any means at all. On the other hand, there's enough good within Justice League for me to not go all in on it or call it trash like I did with Suicide Squad. As a whole, Justice League tried to bring together characters that I legitimately care about, but the timing of it all feels so odd. For the first time ever, I do genuinely think that a Snyder Cut can help make a DCEU movie better. There's just enough potential within the current state of Justice League that maybe, just maybe, this upcoming Snyder Cut edition can do this movie justice. I know, don't hate me, I had to make the pun, alright? As always, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as I Don't Beat Games, and I'm here to bring that DCEU content right to your monitors. The core problem I have with Justice League isn't how they came together. It isn't even the action scenes when they actually fight together as a team. It isn't even the interactions with each other throughout the movie either. Even though, I could have absolutely done without this scene. My main problem with Justice League is Steppenwolf. He doesn't do anything for me at all as a villain in this movie. Coming off of Batman v Superman, I understand that there was a small scene where Lex Luthor was summoning Steppenwolf. The problem, and I honestly hate to draw this comparison, is that Justice League feels like DC wanted to capitalize off of Marvel's Avengers momentum. When you think about it, Justice League also has a similar Thanos-like villain that could potentially end the world as well. Marvel did the job that DC was trying to fast track with this movie, and it sucks, because had they genuinely fleshed out the DCEU, Steppenwolf could have been way more threatening. Steppenwolf could have been that Thanos-like villain for the DCEU, but they didn't build him up. They didn't build that threat in a similar MCU-like fashion throughout the DCEU, and they didn't do this movie any justice by choosing him to be the main villain. By the way, yes, there is Marvel content coming to the channel soon, I promise. Another problem that I have with Justice League is the placement of the movie's release. The only members of the Justice League that actually end up capitalizing from the movie's timing are Aquaman and the Flash. Even then, for Aquaman, Justice League is more of a throwaway line in his movie. Justice League as a whole is an enjoyable movie, and I want to emphasize this fact. It's just that it feels like this movie would have benefited from way more movies happening before it, leading to this Justice League movie instead. Justice League had the potential to genuinely tie these characters together for a reason that doesn't feel forced, and actually create real bonds between these superheroes that we could have seen in future movies. It might be an actual unpopular opinion, but I would have loved to see Aquaman and Wonder Woman in a movie together because there was actual funny scenes between the two. Barry Allen is another character that feels like he could work with almost any of these characters in a team-up movie where he's needed. In fact, I'd almost argue that Barry Allen was the star of this Justice League movie because a majority of his scenes were funny highlight moments. It just happens to be that in this iteration of Justice League, Steppenwolf doesn't feel like a good enough reason for them to team up. It just feels like Batman realized that something bad like an invasion was happening and he couldn't handle it himself, so he took it upon himself to call upon these other heroes for help. It was also very convenient that almost every single one of the Justice League members' ancestors had a past which included Steppenwolf. Also, I absolutely love the subtle nod to Green Lantern. No, hell no, not that Green Lantern. We'll be talking about that movie soon, you can count on that. On a more positive note, one of my favorite things about Justice League as a whole is the beginning of the movie. And no, I'm not talking about this stupid non-mustache CGI Superman scene. I'm specifically talking about this rooftop Batman scene. There's something about this scene that works so well to the point where I wanted more of it. I wanted more of this Batman who's doing cool things like taking out this unimportant thief or whatever. It just works so well, and it actually felt like something we'd normally see Batman do, whether it was in a standalone Batman movie or in a Batman Arkham game. It just works. Even seeing Alfred, which by the way, Alfred doesn't get enough scenes in this movie, pulling up all of the Justice League members' pictures after Batman comes into contact with that scout alien was cool. This scene might have not only been a total of like 5 minutes overall, but it was such a cool, satisfying take on Batman that I actually hope this Snyder Cut remake adds more of this to the beginning of the movie. It's legitimately that good. It also helps seeing Batman in action like this because it was way more interesting than anything Batman's done in Batman v Superman. And that's just a small dose of what Justice League does right. Justice League might not do something great, but I'd be lying to you if I said there weren't things that were good enough. For example, after the early Batman sequence, it's followed by Wonder Woman remaking her first appearance post-Wonder Woman film. There's a full-on robbery that happens, and we get to see this full-on action scene as she defends civilians that are being kept hostage. On one hand, I normally wouldn't nitpick this, but in this scene, Wonder Woman does seem ridiculously faster than usual. On the other hand, it's a comic book movie, and all comic book movies are dumb one way or another, no matter how you look at it. If you've watched my Man of Steel video, you'd know by now that I absolutely hated how they used their flashbacks to transition towards various points of the movie. As Diana's fighting off this group of robbers, she slams her bracers together and they transition to show us the beginning of Aquaman's origin. I know, that's such a simple thing to point out, but you can't blame me for appreciating something so simple after watching Man of Steel, 3 hours of Batman v Superman, and of course Suicide Squad. Speaking of not great, Justice League's story is admittedly paper thin. This is partially due to two reasons. Firstly, Justice League spends around the first 40 minutes introducing Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman. Secondly, the stakes don't feel as high as they should. Honestly, I enjoyed about the first hour of the movie, which essentially was Batman and Wonder Woman assembling this team because of Steppenwolf's demise. In the midst of this though, they also try to tell Steppenwolf's story via exposition scenes with both Diana and the Mascara. This is actually where the movie begins to fall apart for me. Steppenwolf's back after being trapped many years ago by a ton of various groups of people, from Atlanteans to humans to Amazonian warriors. They also separated these mother boxes quietly because of the fact that they contain so much power. They never wanted anyone to gain access to them ever again. By the way, Steppenwolf calls these boxes mother or something. As far as I'm concerned, they never really said why he calls them that, but it is what it is. Why Steppenwolf is back, of course, is due to Lex Luthor's stupid decision in Batman v Superman. Due to the fact that they never really built Steppenwolf over the course of various movies like Marvel did with Thanos, his degree of a threat feels more like another average villain is here, and he's also capable of ending the world. From Man of Steel to Justice League, almost every single DCEU movie has a villain of this magnitude, which partially removes any interest that I should have had when it comes to Steppenwolf. Despite my lack of interest when it comes to Steppenwolf, it doesn't remove a lot of joy that I had as I got to see the Justice League assemble and learn how to work together since they've never actually had a team before. For the most part, the entire first half of Justice League was something that I actually enjoyed. It isn't until the Justice League comes to agreement, at least everyone but Wonder Woman agrees, that they need to resurrect Superman. My problem isn't even with this decision as a whole. My problem is what occurs after they finally resurrect him. Superman gets resurrected. Of course, he doesn't act like himself, which connects with Aquaman foreshadowing this, saying that when people die, they lose a part of themselves. Batman uses Lois to bring Superman to his senses, and then they sort of leave after he kicks the entire Justice League's collective ass. Superman goes back to his home with Lois and he kind of just chills. He doesn't do anything besides staying outside and having a conversation with Lois. This is the beginning of when Justice League begins to go downhill for me. After Superman kicks their ass, they go back to the Batcave, upset that things didn't work as well as they should. This is when things got weird to me, and trust me, I know it's because Joss Whedon took over the second half of Justice League for Zack Snyder. For some reason, they made the decision to make Cyborg the most important role for the end of the movie. This is the same Cyborg who's almost entirely unimportant throughout the first half because he literally just broods the entire time. The first time we even meet him, he's looking out the window in the middle of the night watching people live their lives. Anyway, Cyborg ends up needing to be the guy that decodes this mother box to ensure that Steppenwolf doesn't end the world. On one hand, I understand it makes some sense because he's basically part robot. On the other hand, it doesn't feel like a genuine world built up over the course of the movie. I don't know if this is because of cutscenes that might get shown off in the Snyder Cut version of Justice League, but it doesn't feel genuine in this version of the movie. The Justice League hatches this plan that they need to go to Russia and save the world, because that's where Steppenwolf is located. Then, for some odd reason, we're suddenly following this Russian family who's in trouble because reasons? There's no real connection to this family whatsoever, but for some reason, they really wanted us to follow this Russian family as they get further into trouble due to Steppenwolf's army for no reason at all. We're simply watching this family defend their home as Steppenwolf's army is attacking them, and you almost feel no emotion towards them at all because in actuality, they don't matter. The world's ending, and of course they get saved. It's a superhero movie. It's just that we could have done without these random scenes of this Russian family when they cut away from the action that's actually interesting. Anyway, we get a bunch of fun action scenes as Batman gets Steppenwolf's army away. Wonder Woman leads Cyborg and Aquaman to go fight Steppenwolf, and a bunch of things begin to go wrong as they fight him. This is when we begin to get a bunch of slow-mo scenes that make you think they're gonna lose. Then out of nowhere, Superman is suddenly here. He just comes in as if he knew where they were this entire time. I understand this is Superman we're talking about, but how? Who told him where they were? Alfred? Why didn't we get a scene of him at least coming to help save the day? It's such an odd choice because honestly, jumping to a small scene of Superman flying wouldn't have ruined the momentum at all. I know it's such a small thing to nitpick about, but it just feels so odd. The only reason that I have in my mind that makes sense is they wanted all hope to be lost so Superman could come in and be a symbol of hope again. Anyway, Steppenwolf gets defeated and everyone pretty much goes on about their day. The core problem with the second half of Justice League is that due to Joss Whedon taking care of it, it feels almost too Marvel-like. The entire first half of Justice League has a way more serious tone, even with lighthearted jokes like Wonder Woman embarrassing Aquaman by using the lasso on him secretly in front of the entire Justice League. There's even funny scenes such as Bruce coming to Barry, not as Batman, to ask him to join the Justice League, and Barry's like, "That doesn't explain why there's a stranger in my house left alone sitting in the dark." Another prime example is when Barry tries to lie to Bruce and he throws a batarang at Barry to prove that he knows about his powers. These scenes actually feel like team chemistry being built and are actually in character for this DCEU. The entire second half just makes it feel like everyone is best friends after having problems coming together originally. It wasn't like Aquaman was totally down to team up and be friends with these people. It wasn't until he realized Steppenwolf was a problem for his people that he came to join the Justice League. Even if it's weak, it's still actual growth and showcases a real sense of direction with these characters. Hell, even the Justice League approaching Commissioner Gordon has a funny scene where they all disappear without Barry knowing. Barry's awkward in that moment, but how he leaves is still funny as hell in my opinion. It's just that when it comes to this second half, you can absolutely tell they were aiming to switch tone by adding bright colors such as the reddish tone in the entire second half. Everyone suddenly becomes best friends and has the best team chemistry possible when that isn't even remotely earned. This isn't the Avengers. They didn't build up the chemistry over time and put this team in the position where they need to put their pride aside in order to save the world. Avengers has that key moment where Nick Fury lies to them, saying that Coulson's dead, and since they all like Coulson, Nick Fury uses that as a lesson for them to think of the bigger picture. That begins to roll out this chemistry that makes sense both on paper and on screen for the Avengers. Justice League doesn't have that moment that actually makes sense and creates a switch in tone for the second half. This is why I'm so interested in Justice League Snyder Cut. That original first hour of the movie is actually interesting and actually had me hooked. This is why even till this day I say that there's potential for Justice League to be an actual good movie with the Snyder Cut. This is why if anyone is planning on potentially watching this movie, I'd simply say that you're better off waiting for the Snyder Cut. Unless, you want to compare the two versions for yourself. Justice League is a movie that has highlight moments. It has funny interactions between the team, it has memorable moments such as almost any moment with the Flash and Wonder Woman on screen. Aquaman, of course, is dope as hell, and I can't wait to talk about that movie next. Batman learning to work with a team was fairly entertaining as well, but honestly, nothing special either. From its core issues of Steppenwolf not being interesting or built up as a villain over time, to Cyborg suddenly being the core Justice League member with the most important role despite doing nothing for most of the movie, Justice League as a whole gets brought down as a movie. It might not be as good as the Avengers, but Justice League is still enjoyable and you'll at least laugh a couple of times. Am I excited for the Snyder Cut edition? Absolutely. In fact, I'll probably do a full series on it since it's dropping as episodes. Despite what people might say, Justice League can potentially be redeemed with this upcoming version, patch notes, or whatever you'd like to call it. We've finally done it though. We're on to the last 4 movies of this series, and I'd argue that it's about to actually get fun, even if we don't need to save the world for once. As always, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as I Don't Beat Games, and I'm here to bring that DCEU content right to your monitors. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed this video, hit that sub button. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, write a comment down below. Don't forget to keep it real with peace, love, and positivity.